When it comes to hugely successful station wagons in America, the Subaru Outback quickly comes to mind. Remember, this car started out as an experiment for Subaru back in the 1990s. However, it grew to become one of the company's best-selling models, with Subaru managing to sell a little over 161,000 here in the States back in 2023. Now, last year, the company decided to give the latest 6th generation Outback its first full refresh. Changes include new styling in the front fascia, some new wheels, and some upgraded software in the tech. And as you can see, this week, Subaru has loaned us the top-of-the-line version known as the Touring XT. You can see this particular week, I'm testing out this model painted in dark mahogany pearl. And the big question I want to answer, for those of you who wouldn't be caught dead in an SUV, but you require the capability and the practicality of that type of vehicle, how does the latest version of the Subaru Outback stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the slight styling changes that Subaru has made, let's go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, just like when this car first debuted back in 2020, Subaru continues to offer a choice of 2 different engines. This right here is the upgraded turbocharged motor. Now, underneath this hood, you're going to find an engine that you should be quite familiar with. Even something like the Subaru WRX uses a variation of this powertrain. It's the company's latest 2.4-liter turbocharged direct injection Boxer Flat 4. It still makes 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. It has a turbocharger on it that is pushing in around 14.5 pounds of max boost pressure. It all goes out through, of course, a Lineartronic CVT. It's Subaru's latest continuously variable transmission. And typical, like every other Subaru except the BRZ, this car comes standard with the company's latest generation symmetrical all-wheel drive system with their X mode, although it doesn't have the dual function X mode that you get in the Onyx XT or the Wilderness version. In terms of fuel efficiency, this model here is rated to get 22 in the city, 29 on the highway. It has an 18.5 gallon fuel tank, so you're looking at around 400 to 500 miles of range between fill-ups. That's of course on regular grade gas as well. This doesn't require premium like in the past with Subaru's turbocharged engines. Subaru doesn't claim a 0 to 60 time, but the last time we tested this car, we got just under 6 seconds, so we'll see what we can get in our actual testing in the real world. In terms of towing, this vehicle will also tow a maximum of 3,500 pounds. It has a top speed of around 130 miles an hour, and as this car sits, it weighs in at just under 4,000 pounds. Now, closing the hood and checking out the styling of this 2024 Outback. Like I said earlier, this vehicle got a refresh back in 2023. It includes like a new front fascia, some new wheels. And this particular model that I'm showing you is painted in dark mahogany pearl. It's like a very dark brownish red color. It also has some metallic fleck in it, which unfortunately you won't be able to see right now because it's a little bit of a dreary, overcast day. If you guys got a turbocharged Outback, there used to be a hood scoop. However, Subaru did away with that for this new generation, as you can see. And you can see the headlights are slightly squintier. Every Outback comes standard with the company's swiveling adaptive LED headlights with, as you can see, LED low and high beams, an incandescent turn signal, however, and you also have an LED daytime running light. You have LED fog lights as well down here, which is actually standard even on the base. And you can see there's a little bit more cladding because of the new front fascia. So there's this new piece here that kind of creates like a fake air intake. Some painted portions here in the bumper, the grille. The hexagonal grille is also slightly larger with more air intakes. You can see there's also a front camera system that's included if you guys go for this trim or the Wilderness trim. You can see over here, it kind of tries to resemble like a little bit of a front brush guard or a skid plate. Underneath here, the car offers around 8.7 inches of ground clearance and no skid plates on this model. It is available, of course, if you guys go for the Wilderness trim. But let me know what you guys think of the updated styling in the comment section below. I personally think that the pre-refreshed Outback actually looked a little bit better. I actually owned one of those for a year in autumn green in this exact trim, and I don't particularly love the front fascia of this new one. If you guys don't like this front end, you can buy the Wilderness, which got a new front bumper for 2024, and it looks a little bit different versus what you find on all the other Outback models. Now, moving around the side profile, you can see Subaru doesn't like it if you call this a station wagon because it's kind of a dirty word here in America, but this is the most successful sales-wise station wagon in the States, and that's because it's kind of like an SUV. Now, in terms of the size, this Outback is around 191.8 inches long. It rides on a 108.1 inch long wheelbase. This is obviously a mid-size vehicle on the outside because it's longer than compact SUVs by like 6 to 8 inches, but It does still give you some good ground clearance at 8.7 inches, 9.5 if you guys go for the Wilderness. The wheels, you can see these wheels have been updated this year, although the wheel design themselves kind of reminds me of the 5th generation Outback on the higher trims. It kind of has like a machine two-tone gray inner spoke pocket design. It's an 18-inch wheel wrapped in a 225 by 60 R18 tire. This is a Yokohama Avid GT. Keep in mind, if you guys go for the Wilderness, that'll give you an all-terrain tire on a 17-inch wheel. I'm surprised that Subaru is not offering like a bigger 19-inch wheel, especially on the touring grades. But again, you have this big fat profile or sidewall to give you some better ride quality and more sidewall protection for those of you who plan to take this vehicle off-roading. You have 4-wheel disc brakes. The front rotors measure 12.5 inches, and the rears, I believe, are slightly under 12 inches. You can see the cladding is all over the side of the vehicle. This looks pretty much the same. You can't get that painted or any way because, again, this is supposed to be a SUV, not necessarily a wagon. At least that's what Subaru likes to claim. There's some bright trim, chrome trim around the window trim. You can see the side mirrors here are also kind of like in this metallic silver design. That's exclusive to the touring grade, which kind of lets people know that you have a touring grade in general. The roof rails, I love how Subaru gives you an actual functional and usable roof rail. No panoramic sunroof. This is something where the Outback should offer something like that. But keep in mind the Wilderness trim also has a beefier look to the actual roof rails. In terms of this profile here, you can really see the wagon proportions. This is a pretty nice sized vehicle, but again, it gives you the ability to load stuff on the roof without being too tall like a typical SUV. Moving around the rear of the vehicle, the styling in the back looks pretty similar to the refresh model. The taillights are an LED and incandescent combination. You can see the turn signal and reverse light is just an incandescent. The brake lights, it looks like, and the taillights themselves are an LED. Lots of badging on the back. Subaru tends to do that with all the badging back here. It's a little bit too cluttered for my particular taste. There's a little subtle rear spoiler back here, along with a rear window wiper, which is nice. Down here at the rear bumper, you can see the bumper itself is unpainted, just like on the front. You also have that silver trim to kind of give it more of a rugged look. Exhaust pieces, or the exhaust is a dual system. It's kind of hidden and tucked away underneath the bumper. And if you guys want to get a tow package, that'll give you that $3,500 towing capacity, or 3,500 pound towing capacity. Now, opening up the cargo area, you can see a power liftgate is included on this trim and most of the higher trims. And then in terms of the cargo space, the Outback does a pretty good job here. You have around 32, just under 33 cubic feet of total storage space back here, which is pretty comparable to what you get in a lot of compact SUVs. You can see the space back here is very usable. It's very long. You also have like a little bit of a underfloor storage area. There's a temporary spare tire with a jack located underneath here. And then if you want to fold down these seats, you can do that by kind of pulling on these levers back here. And when you pull on these levers back here, it gives you almost a completely flat floor, and you're looking at just under 76 cubic feet of total storage space. That is going to be around 5 to 10 cubic feet more versus what you're going to find in a lot of compact SUVs. But I also want you to keep in mind the roof line is not quite as tall as an SUV. So even though you have a long amount of space here lengthwise, in terms of height, you are going to find a little bit more space in something like a traditional sport utility vehicle like a Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport or a Honda Passport. So on the outside, the exterior changes were very subtle, but let's go ahead and take a look at the interior, where the interior changes are also even more subtle. Before we get inside, let me show you guys the key fob. You can see if you guys go for basically a premium, I believe, trim and up, you should be able to get Subaru's smart key access system with their push button start. This is their latest intelligent access key. It has the usual buttons here for lock, unlock, power liftgate, and panic. Subaru does not offer phone as a key, but you can access this vehicle through the Subaru Starlink app, where I believe you can also get remote start on the vehicle as well. But you can see I don't have access to that because this is a press vehicle. Now, the touring grade also includes a traditional door handle with the chrome outline. If I touch this little ridge area here, that locks the door in and also power folds the mirrors in. The power folding mirrors are exclusive to the touring grade. So if you see that on this vehicle, you know it's a touring, along with the metallic trim on the side mirrors. Touch the back of the door handle, that also unlocks the door for you. Subaru does not offer an auto walk-away lock or unlock feature, so that's something to keep in mind if you guys are checking out some of the competition. Now, looking at the interior, you can see the touring grade also is the only Outback model to give you a premium Napa leather seat. These seats are also heated and ventilated, which is again unique to the touring grade. The Napa leather just basically means it's a softer leather. It's actually a real leather, unlike the StarTex that you're gonna find in something like the Wilderness trim or the regular leather and the limited trim. The seats, as you can see, they adjust in 12 different ways. You also have 2-person memory. That's included if you guys go for the limited and up trims. But if you want the cooled seats, again, you have to go for the touring grade. You can see the door panel has some soft touch injection molded plastic, some leather and contrasting stitching over here, along with this on the elbow or the armrest pad. Windows are one touch up down for all 4, which is a nice touch. A lot of the window controls and switches and such, they feel really high quality. There's a standard premium Harman Kardon stereo system, which I believe has 9 speakers. It sounds decent. If you guys are an audiophile, it sounds pretty much on par with what you're gonna find from the competition. But getting inside, you can see with that 8.7 inches of ground clearance is a nice easy step-in position, which is a nice change, especially if you guys are coming from a sedan or car-like type vehicle. When I shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built on the Subaru Global platform that was introduced when this car was first introduced back in 2020. Now, starting the vehicle up, you can see start stop button is where you'd expect it to be. And then when you turn the car on, it has the Subaru chime. It has these gauges with the mixture of analog and digital, where you can see the needles do a full sweep. Subaru still, for some reason, does not offer an actual full digital gauge cluster. I was hoping the company would be showing that at some point, but you can see here you have kind of like this 4-inch helper screen in the center, along with the big dials for the tach and the speedometer. If you guys prefer a traditional look, you're gonna like this, but again, a lot of competitors have gone to a full digital display. If you guys go for the premium and up trims, you're also gonna get the company's 11.6-inch Subaru Starlink head unit here. Now, this was the first vehicle to get this 11.6-inch display. Now, almost every Subaru basically has this system. It now includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is a nice touch. Before, you had to plug it in via the USB connection over here. In terms of the materials, you can see the upper dash here has a soft touch injection molded plastic. This is a hard touch plastic here. This is for the basically the driver focus feature, where it has a camera that scans your face. It can remember your facial recognition, so it'll automatically load up your settings if you have your profile kind of stored into the actual vehicle. The steering wheel, as you can see, it's practically the same as the pre-refresh model. It's got a manual tilt and telescoping adjustment with a good amount of adjustability and range. You have paddles on the wheel. You have your controls here for your audio information for the Subaru EyeSight. There's also a heated steering wheel. If you guys go for the upper trims, you'll get that included. The horn, it sounds pretty nice, nondescript, but it doesn't sound puny or, you know, small compared to some competitors. You can see in terms of the infotainment system, this is pretty much the same as the last one that I showed you. Subaru eventually added an update, I believe in 2021, that allowed the CarPlay to go full screen, which is definitely a nice touch. If you guys want to, you know, kind of go back to the Subaru unit here, you can kind of hit that home display. You can see the Starlink head unit. The graphics aren't great. You can see there's also a lot of reflections in the actual screen, so I don't love that. But the beauty about this, you know, material is it doesn't show fingerprint marks as easily as some other competitors' infotainment systems show, so that's a nice touch. You can see up here, if you kind of scroll through that, you can kind of go through all these different information screens, weather, you can turn on and off the X mode. It has a single function X mode in this trim. Or you can also just show your audio information, which is, again, all nice. In terms of the heated seats, the buttons are located in the screen. There was a time where Subaru was kind of using these old school buttons that you can still find in something like the BRZ. The difference, however, they did this year is the fact that if you basically want to turn on and off the heated seat, before you would touch the seat icon, it would bring up an extra sub menu where you'd have to choose the heat or ventilation. Now Subaru just makes it so you just touch it, it automatically turns it on. I think that was a much needed change, and it kind of takes it takes out an unnecessary step that kind of simplifies the functionality of this display. So I like the fact that Subaru has addressed that. The car also has built-in navigation by TomTom. Most of you probably won't use this. Instead, you're just going to use the Apple CarPlay function and just use the Google Maps or Waze or Apple Maps because that, again, looks pretty nice, but the resolution could be better. Put the vehicle in reverse, you can see it has reverse automatic braking and cross traffic alert parking sensor. It has trajectory, although the resolution of the camera quality is just awful, especially considering this is a 2024 model. Subaru should really be upgrading that if they want to compete with the other competitors. If I push this little view button here, this is also one of the few trims that comes with a front camera, although Subaru still does not offer a full 360 camera. That's something that they just introduced in the new Subaru Forester, along with heads-up display. There is no heads-up display in this vehicle. Which is something at this price category and this high trim, it should have that feature. So again, that's something that Subaru will likely add for the next generation. Down over here, you can see, for some reason, no wireless phone charging pad, although I know that's a dealer accessory. I'm surprised it doesn't come from the factory. However, at this price point, you have a USB-C, a USB-A, you have an electronic parking brake. My smartphone does fit in here, although as you can see, the iPhone 14 Pro Max kind of barely fits in there. It still kind of sticks out annoyingly. This controls the continuously variable transmission. It's very traditional with a manual. If you want to put it into a manual mode, you have to slap it here and then you use the paddles. This shifter doesn't actually allow you to engage the manual control. There's some stitching over here on the center console, cup holder storage, although there isn't really much in terms of center console storage. I've seen more from some competing vehicles. There's a little bit of storage over here, but again, it's a little bit lacking. There's no additional storage down here, although there is one here on the passenger side, just a little bit of a tiny mail slot, which is nice. Padded center console, obviously. Then if I open this up, you can see there's still a CD player in there, which is kind of funny to see. You have a 12-volt power outlet. You have a relatively shallow but usable storage area. You can see there's also 2 levels, although this is pretty shallow as well, so you can't really put anything there except for maybe some loose change and some keys and maybe a thin wallet. The seats, as I mentioned earlier, these are the premium Napa seats. The heat and ventilation function works pretty well. The driver's seat is a 12-way power. The passenger seat is also, it looks like, a 12-way power, although it doesn't have any adjustable lumbar support. So it's just an 8-way power on the passenger side with no adjustable lumbar support. That would have been nice considering the price point of this vehicle. There's no interior ambient lighting in this car, or LED lighting, which is a shame. You do have some LED map lighting in here, which is nice. You have a standard sunroof, which is good. And then if you open up the glove compartment here, you can see it's a bin style, it's damped, and it's lined with felt. But overall, the interior is certainly very usable. It's just not quite as practical or offers as much storage solutions as some of its competitors, but it does have great visibility, and you definitely get a sense that you're driving around in a vehicle that's more car-like versus SUV-like. But let's go ahead and hop into the back seat so I can show you guys the space back here. Now, because this is a mid-sized vehicle, you do have more rear seat legroom than some competitors by as much as like 2 to 5 inches more rear seat legroom. Subaru says there's 39.5 inches back here, which is certainly very usable. You guys saw earlier, you can fold the seats down and it creates almost a completely flat load floor, which is very nice. The seats themselves, they don't slide forward and they don't recline, but you can see here there's a pretty good amount of space. In terms of the materials, you have the same soft touch materials here with the stitching, of course, some storage and pockets, of course, in the door cubbies. You can see hard touch plastic down here, along with some cup holder storage. I'm glad to see that the one touch rear windows also carry over here. The window controls feel nice. As I get inside, you can see it has kind of like a stadium style seating where the rear seat feels like it's slightly more elevated. As I shut the door, the door has the same solid sounding thunk as the front. And then as you can see here, back seat area has some nice touches. You have 2 level heated rear seats. You have rear seat air vents. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, or USB-A and a USB-C. Love the fact that you have those additional features. There's 2 levels of storage cubbies here in the actual door pockets. And then if you fold this armrest down, you can see there's 2 cup holders as well. The headroom space back here you can see is pretty good, although again, this vehicle is not quite as tall as an SUV. I'm 5'7". I have plenty of space. But for those of you who are a little bit taller, you will notice that the sunroof takes up a little bit of space. In general, if I want to sit back here and cross my legs, I can certainly do that. But definitely if you're looking for the bigger back seat in the compact SUV segment, this definitely offers more of a mid-size SUV in terms of the total rear seat legroom. Now, for those of you who have always had a soft spot for a station wagon, a Subaru Outback should probably be at the very top of your list. And I know this vehicle pretty well because I actually owned one of these cars for about a year. I remember I purchased one in autumn green in this trim level back in 2020. And it was basically when this sixth generation first came out. Subaru made some styling updates to it last year, which have obviously carried over into 2024. We also got a slight infotainment system refresh, but overall the driving dynamics of this car should stay pretty much the same. But it's been a couple years since I actually have driven one, so I figured let's go ahead and retest it out on my local roads here. Now, this model is the top of the line version. It has the 2.4 liter turbocharged Boxer Flat 4 paired up with a continuously variable transmission with the company's symmetrical all-wheel drive system. The last time I 0 to 60 tested a wilderness, I think I got like 5.8 seconds. So let's go ahead and see what we can get in this car here. Now, this car doesn't have a sport mode. To get your quickest acceleration, you'll basically brake torque it. All right, we got 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. Now, what's interesting about that time is this car feels pretty lethargic off the line. And even when you brake torque it, you have some lag from the CVT, you have some lag from the turbocharged engine, and it feels a little bit slow initially. But then once the revs pass 3,000 and you can feel the CVT kind of holds the revs like right around 5,000, 5,500 RPM, it feels quick at that point because you get that linear, rush of low-end torque that you get from a turbocharged engine. The engine itself doesn't sound very pleasant, but you know, I think most Subaru owners or drivers are probably not even going to notice, you know, the revingness of it or the kind of lethargicness of it, because you're not going to really accelerate the way I just did. But let me just floor it here from a stop. We'll see what we can get without brake torquing it. The auto start stop in this car needs to be turned off because it is super annoyingly slow to react. But we got 6.5 there, and that's because the auto start stop is really, really annoying. So to turn that off, it's right here in the screen. Subaru used to have to bury it into a menu system where you had to go into like the car icon to turn it off there. Now it's just kind of sitting there at the screen, which is nice because the auto start stop in this car is among the worst that I've tested in the industry because it doesn't have any kind of electrification. It just basically exuberates the lagginess of the engine and the transmission, and you know, plus the engine restarting because it doesn't have any kind of mild hybrid system. So overall, that is a little bit of a disappointment. But once you turn off the auto start stop and you just drive the Outback normally, this is where the car is a very pleasant vehicle to drive. It has a really comfortable ride quality. We only have these 18-inch wheels on a 60 series tire, and that transmits to lots of cushioning when you hit a pothole or a bump, or if you plan to take this vehicle off-roading. I do kind of wish Subaru would do like a sport version of this car where it would give it a bigger, fatter tire with a low profile tire and a more sport-tuned suspension, but that would again harm the mission of the Outback. People who buy this type of vehicle aren't looking for something sporty, although I do wish that it looked a little bit more sporty on the outside. I mean, obviously the Wilderness model gives it more of that hardcore off-roady edge, wilderness edge, but for those of you who don't need that extra capability, this car basically goes about its business with very little fuss, unless you start driving over the line like I just did, where the eyesight driver assistance tech can still annoyingly beep bloody murder at you for not staying within your lane, and I think that's super annoying. But overall, the driving feel of this car hasn't really changed. The steering is very light, but also slightly devoid of feel. The all-wheel drive system does about its business just fine. There's an initial lag until you go past 3,000 RPM, and then the turbo kicks in, the CVT kind of gets itself together, and this car feels pretty fast. I mean, 6.5 earlier is probably what you're gonna get in the normal real world, but I'm gonna try it one more time here and see if we can get closer to that 5.9 second time when I brake torqued it, because that's, again, among the quicker times in the segment. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of you who haven't driven this turbo engine. But here, floor it, much better without the stupid auto start stop slowing things down. When you don't brake torque it, it actually will mimic shifts. Now we got 5.9 there without brake torquing it. When you brake torque it, it will hold the revs, but as you guys see, the 0 to 60 time is pretty much the same, and that time is going to be sufficiently quick for, I believe, the majority of people. I mean, yes, you could also save a little bit of money, about $3,500 to $4,000 if you guys just go for the standard non-turbo engine, but I think most of you are probably going to want that. When you can see, when I'm just driving the vehicle normally, the CVT continues to mimic shifts. You hear the engine drone a little bit, but it's a more refined engine than, you know, in the base engine. I think this turbo engine has a little bit more refinement to it. It's technically a variation of the engine you're going to find in a Subaru WRX. And I have to say, the last WRX with the SPT, the CVT Subaru Performance Transmission, I got like low 6-second 0 to 60 time. So it's kind of interesting to me that this Outback is actually faster than the automatic CVT equipped WRX. Now, Subaru claims that over 50% of WRX buyers go for the manual. That is going to be quicker than this car if you do a very aggressive clutch dump on it. But, you know, don't pick any, if you guys are an owner of a WRX CVT, don't pick a fight too much with an XT Outback, because you might end up losing at a stoplight drag race, which would be a little bit embarrassing for the WRX. But overall, the seats are comfortable. They are heated and ventilated. This is the only trim to get ventilated seats. The heated steering wheel also feels nice. It's heated completely around the entire wheel. There's excellent visibility out of the front, the side, out of the rear. There's also that digital camera rearview mirror for those of you who plan to pack this thing up to the roof with stuff or people. And it's pretty quiet in here. When you're not pushing the engine, I hear very little road noise, very little engine noise, very little wind noise. And it just feels like a refined vehicle, and that's kind of where the Subaru Outback is an excellent all-around car, because it's a really great car to drive. It's quiet and refined. It also feels a lot more small and nimble versus an SUV. I mean, you do have that higher up seating position, but you get the sense that you're still driving a car. I feel like I'm driving a car that's just slightly lifted until you look out in the back. When you turn that off, you can see, oh, you are driving a wagon SUV type vehicle, although the roof line in this car isn't quite as high as an SUV, so you will be, you know, dealing with a little bit less headroom versus some of its competitors. In terms of the fuel efficiency, this is where Subaru would really benefit if they would just do a hybrid version of this car. I think a hybrid pretty much holds it back from being a near perfect vehicle or close to perfect vehicle. In terms of fuel efficiency, in my week's worth of testing, I averaged around 23 miles to the gallon in mixed driving. On the highway, this car did around 28.5 mpg. That's basically right on target with what the EPA says at 22-29. It is about 3 to 4 mpg better versus what I got in a 2022 Subaru Outback Wilderness. So the Wilderness model, with its lifted suspension and its all-terrain tires, do lower the fuel efficiency, and of course the roof rails, which are less aerodynamic. So again, if you don't need the extra capability of the Wilderness, this Touring XT will certainly suffice, and it gets decent mpg in the highway. I mean, with its big 18.5 gallon fuel tank, you can easily do over 400 miles of range on a full tank, which is an excellent number. I think that number is going to, go close to what a lot of hybrid SUVs are even going to offer. In fact, on the highway, this thing should do over 400 or over nearly 500 miles of range on a full tank. When Subaru dropped this car off, the trip computer was showing actually around 510, but in reality, I was getting around 450. So overall, the Outback is still a really nice car to drive. I mean, this vehicle was Subaru's best-selling model in 2023 with 160,000+ units sold, and it's pretty easy to see why, but I really think Subaru could add even more sales if they would just add a hybrid powertrain. Obviously, maybe that's something Subaru will work on for the next generation. We're probably going to have this Outback around at least until 2026, but for those of you who wouldn't be caught dead in an SUV and you want something that's a station wagon but don't want to give up the capability, the ground clearance, and the practicality, the latest Outback should definitely still make it to the top of your list. So after spending a full week with the latest version of the Subaru Outback, it's pretty easy to see why Subaru managed to sell a little over 161,000 units here in the States back in 2023. That makes this car the best-selling Subaru vehicle here in the States. It outsold the Subaru Crosstrek by about 2,000 units, and it outsold the Subaru Forester by about 10,000 units. Now, I suspect that number should change. The Crosstrek, the Forester, and the Outback all tend to be Subaru's top-selling models, but this version here, the latest 6th generation, has plenty to like about it. As you guys see, in terms of the exterior design, that is always a subjective thing, but Subaru pretty much kept everything else the same. The 2.4 liter turbo is basically the motor to get, at least in my eyes. You can also go for the base engine if you want to save a little bit of money, but you should expect a 0 to 60 time of around 2.5 to 3 seconds slower. As you guys saw, 0 to 60 in just under 6 seconds makes this among the quickest vehicles that you're going to find in the segment. What would make it perfect for me is if Subaru would offer this powertrain as a hybrid option, because a hybrid would seriously improve the lagginess that you feel from the CVT and of course the turbo lag from the engine, and it would also greatly improve the fuel efficiency. In my week's worth of testing, getting around 23, 24 mpg in mixed driving is acceptable, but a hybrid could easily improve that to well over 30 mpg, and that's where something like the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid comes to mind. In terms of the interior, the tech department, the software behind the 11.6-inch Subaru Starlink display is still decent, but it also needs a little bit of work. I like the fact that Subaru did clean up a little bit of the menu structure and how some of the buttons operate, of course. I also like the fact that CarPlay is now wireless along with Android Auto, but the resolution of the screen still isn't great, and it's still a little bit laggy and slow at times. I love the fact that Subaru's eyesight is standard, although the beeping can get a little bit annoying. That's something that you kind of get used to, or you just turn off if you kind of get tired of the system entirely. In terms of the back seat, it's among the most spacious in the class. The cargo area is certainly very spacious, but it's not quite as usable as some of the tallest, boxiest SUVs, because again, this is a wagon. It's not going to have quite the same kind of roof storage capability that you get from a sport utility vehicle. If you guys plan to do some off-roading, this is also one of the few options out there, because again, it's a wagon, but it also has off-road capability, especially if you guys go for the Wilderness trim, and that's what makes the Outback so appealing. There are so many different variants for every type of person, every type of budget, every type of lifestyle, and that's where the Outback's popularity comes into play, because if you guys are looking to purchase this vehicle, it is also priced along the same lines as a compact SUV, but it gives you the space and practicality of a mid-size SUV, wrapping it in, again, a wagon flavored wrapper if you guys don't want to drive something like a SUV. That's what everyone tends to drive. Base pricing for the base model of the Outback, which comes standard with all-wheel drive and the steering responsive LED headlights, the twin 7-inch displays. This model, or the base version, starts at around just under $29,000. Most of you are probably going to add around $2,000 to go toward the premium trim. Now, if you guys want to go up to the turbocharged engine, the turbocharged engine will start at just under $40,000. The Wilderness is also a great option because the Wilderness is just under 40 grand. It gives you the turbo engine, it gives you the upgraded suspension, the lifted suspension, the upgraded all-wheel drive system, and a lot of features like the StarTex waterproof seats. If you guys want ventilated seats and basically all the bells and whistles, you're going to want to go for this touring version, which Subaru offers it in a turbo and a non-turbo spec. This model here starts at just over $42,500 with destination and, of course, the all-weather mats that my tester has, and you're looking at a total price of $44,231. I know 44 grand does sound like a pretty good chunk of money, but it's right along the lines of basically where the average new car transaction price is. And also keep in mind, if you're looking at a fully loaded version of like a CR-V or a RAV4 or a CX-50, the Outback is going to be right around the same price. But again, you get a station wagon, you get that powerful turbocharged engine, and you also get a unique design along with the practicality that comes with being a mid-size type of vehicle. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2024 Subaru Outback and this Touring XT trim. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.